What is going on, everybody? Welcome in. It's Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. I'm Howard Bender. With me here, Adam Ronis. Look at that, Ronis. It's like the Ante Up podcast daytime version here. How you doing on Friday here?
Good, man. Busy as always. A lot going on, and still some NFL fantasy football drafts. I think a lot of people are already looking forward to week one, less than a week away. But a lot of people are drafting this weekend. There's drafts next week, so hold off on those lineup calls. We still have some time for that. I know everyone's anxious. Everyone gets anxious. Like, who do I start? Like, someone asked me, I think yesterday, and I'm like, let's kind of see. This is going to be a very difficult week one, I think, because we've had no preseason, and we're actually going to learn a lot here in these first 2 weeks. We do every year, but this year it's going to be even more. So, just kind of hold off on these decisions. Remember, we have one game Thursday, Texans, Chiefs, and a lot of these decisions we can make Sunday morning, Saturday. We can set a preliminary lineup, but the problem is, how busy we are. And if people ask us now, we give an answer, it could drastically change by next week. We already had news today that's going to change some things that I'm sure we'll discuss. So just remember, we have time. Everyone just wants to set that lineup. Relax, guys. We got time.
If there was a year of all, and I say this all the time, I'm like, listen, people, no start-sit questions until Wednesday, because news is still coming out on Monday and Tuesday. You're still waiting for test results on X-rays and MRIs, and it's just not smart. I get it if you're like going away and you want to set a prelim lineup, fine, but that's not. I mean, like Adam just said, and especially now in like the time of COVID. Because, what's going to happen when you're sitting there on, Saturday or Saturday late afternoon or early Sunday morning, and six guys on the Colts test positive for COVID, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh well, what do I do with Jonathan Taylor now? What do I do with this guy? So this is the year that you need to show swift action on your waiver wire, but patience when it comes to setting your lineup, and patience when it comes to a lot of the news there. So definitely something to take into consideration. Now, what I did want to talk to you today about, Adam, was just what you alluded to, the news that's breaking right now. A lot of teams are going and doing their roster cuts, and we're starting to see some of the names that we kind of had on, whether it was the ultimate cheat sheet, whether they were in our rankings anywhere. Adrian Peterson got the boot from the Washington football team. A lot of talk about Bryce Love being on the bubble. So, this obviously throws a kind of a little, not a monkey wrench, but what this does is, to me, and I'll ask you, it elevates where you're going to have to take Antonio Gibson in your drafts. You are going to have to look for Bryce Love late in your drafts. And, now you also have to sit and watch the news to find out, is somebody going to sign Adrian Peterson?
Yeah, look, I had no interest in Adrian Peterson at all. It didn't matter where he was being drafted. And look, I respect the hell out of him. What he did last year and still playing, he's still a good back. It's just he wasn't utilized in the passing game. It was a team that we expected to be playing from behind, not very good, even though I do like their defense. And I just don't like those boring players, even in the double-digit rounds. I know people rationalize and say, well, he's a starting running back, so I had no interest in Adrian Peterson, and I likely won't, no matter where he goes. Now, Antonio Gibson is getting a lot of hype. I know we have talked about him on our Ante Up podcast, and I think we were both pretty high on him. It's funny, like just a few days ago on the podcast, we were talking about, you were like, I haven't looked at my Scott Fishbowl team in a while, and neither did I. And then we both looked, and I was like, oh, wow, I got Antonio Gibson, RB52, double-digit rounds. And I was pretty high on him before this news anyway. We did our Greenwich Street Tavern draft on Tuesday night. I took Antonio Gibson in round 10 of a 12-team league. Late in the 10th round, I had picked 4, so towards the end of round 10. So I was pretty high on him. I got him in my home league as well the previous last Saturday, round 9 or 10 as well. Now, I think they are going to use a few backs here, but Gibson is the guy they seem most excited about. He was basically a running back receiver at college, but a lot of the NFL personnel were looking at him as a running back. He's an explosive athlete, 6 foot, 220 pounds. And I know he only had 33 carries last year in college, but they'll probably use him in the slot. This is a team that's I think, going to play from behind. So I think there's more opportunity for him. Bryce Love is there too. It was funny because there was a report, was it within the last week? Oh, he might not make the team. Well, that's not going to happen now. We know he missed last year due to injury. They do have the boring Peyton Barber there, which maybe ruins things for fantasy owners. But again, he's not going to be involved in a passing game, and I see them playing from behind. But Adrian Peterson had a quote that I saw Josina Anderson. I guess I'm assuming she got him on record first. And he mentioned, yeah, they really like Antonio Gibson. So he was there. He's seen the practices. And he even said, hey, I understand. I mean, he looks good. So Gibson's the guy. The problem is the price tag is going to soar, man. And I see him. I'm interested to watch some drafts tonight. I know there's some big high-stakes leagues draft. Even in home league drafts, I think people follow this news now. Everyone's savvy, and not everyone, but a lot of people are now. I think home leagues have become more challenging over the years because there's so much news, and a site like Fantasy Alarm. It's just join, and you're going to see where we have them ranked, and it's going to move them up the draft board. So that's the only thing I'm worried about, is that the price tag is going to become too much. But this is why you hopefully already sub to Fantasy Alarm and you listen to our live streams, listen to our podcast, because we've been talking up Antonio Gibson. We've been telling you where we've been drafting him. And that's why the benefits of drafting early is you take these guys when they're cheap. It's all about the market and what you're paying for. Like everything in life, right? When you shop, you want the discount, right?
Right.
You want to find a product that's cheap. It's different prices everywhere. Oh, here's the cheapest one. That's what we want. And that's what we were doing with Antonio Gibson. I'm just worried now that these drafts, he's going to go too high. I mean, 5th, 6th round, I don't know if I'm buying at that price. How about you?
I mean, it's tough, because you've got that offensive line, and that's still a problem over there for Washington. What I do like Scott Turner, their new OC, I like their, his creativity, and you saw how he was really able to get more out of his players last year in Carolina. A guy like Curtis Samuel, all of a sudden, you throw him in some more reverses, some more jet sweeps, and all of a sudden you've got, better production. So I could see reverses and lining up Gibson in the slot. And I could see him being utilized extremely well there. I think with the type of offense that they want to run, and that whole playing from behind mentality as well, I do think it boosts him. I mean, do you have to look for him you probably have to look for him in the 6th round. I mean, 5th, I mean, that's definitely tough, when you start talking about, the public perception and how they start elevating. I mean, we went nuts the other day when we were talking about Rykel Armstead being taken in the 5th round by people. It was like, what are you doing with that? Like, that's so, I mean, listen, the closer you get to the regular season, the less likely there are any sleepers available, and you really need to kind of make that move, and you're probably going to end up having to overdraft, and you're not going to get the value. You're not going to get the same value as if you drafted a month ago, or even 2 weeks ago for that matter.
Yeah, and we just don't want to overpay. So as exciting as he can be, sometimes you just say, all right, I'm going to let him go. Let someone else take him if they're going to overpay. And that's, part of being a good drafter is being disciplined and letting the value fall to you. Now, if he goes earlier than you expect or want to pay for, that means someone else should drop for you and you should take advantage. But, people react to it's always great to see drafts the day of, right, when the news breaks, because it's all over the place. You talked about Armstead. Yeah. You talk so when the Fournette news broke, I saw him go in the 3rd round of one league, the 6th in another. And I think you'll see the same with Gibson today. Maybe he goes in the 5th, maybe he goes in the 8th. But, when people have little time to react to the news, you see extremes. Armstead went in the 6th round of my GST draft. I'm sorry. No, thank you, man. I mean, that's just, I'm not doing it. I was able to get him in the last round of the SiriusXM host league I did about a week and a half ago. And that's why we've had discussions about this where I've always said, that's why later in drafts, I want to take as many shots on running backs as possible, because you never know what could happen. And I took Armstead. Did I know Leonard Fournette was going to get released? Absolutely not. But I knew things were not right in Jacksonville. Right. You could just read everything that was going on. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. They were trying to trade him. And I knew, all right, let me just take Armstead. And if it doesn't work out, I cut him. Now I got a guy in round 16 that even if, and I'm not as high on him as everyone, like there's still other backs there. We've heard good things about Devine Ozigbo. They do have Chris Thompson and the kid Robinson. So it's not like Armstead's a lock to get bulk of the workload, but I got a potential guy in the mix in round 16 because, taking a shot. And that's what I like to do late in drafts, especially early, the ones that are 3 weeks to 2 months before the season, because you just don't know what could happen before the start of the season. And Fournette's a perfect example. And the release of Adrian Peterson is another example.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's kind of funny. You brought up Robinson, which is the second time that I've heard his name now in the past couple of days. You want to talk about gleaning from other analysts and things like that. Mike Dempsey works with the Jaguars and he does radio down there. So I'm in a dynasty, the Football Diehards Dynasty League that Mike created. And lo and behold, first round of waivers passed on Wednesday, and what it was the first thing I saw? I saw a $450 plus bid on James Robinson from Mike Dempsey, and immediately that was like I went to any other league and I checked to see if it was waiver wire, if it was like what the date was for waivers. Could I pick somebody up as a free agent right now and where to sneak a peek and take a look at? But now sitting there in a draft, I've got a number of drafts coming up also. That's a name that's just going to sit there. I'm going to find him on the queue because in the queue on any software that you use, I don't care if it's ESPN, CBS, Yahoo, RT Sports, James Robinson is buried in that queue. So go down there, look for him, grab him, and last round. There's nothing wrong with just a speculative grab like that. Now, let me ask you, Antonio Gibson, what's the furthest you're going to let him fall before you take him?
Probably 7th round, I think. I mean, 6 seems still a little early because remember, there's still very good wide receivers there in round 6. So my lean is round 7 now, but I've always said this. You really don't know until you're on the clock in a draft. Like we can sit here and say, oh, I'll do this, do that. I always say the litmus test is when you're on the clock and what do you do? And when I'm doing these drafts and I see how I react, then sometimes I go back and I go, you know what? I got to change my rankings. This is what I did here. I got to make sure it's reflected in my rankings. So my early guess is 6th, 7th round. Again, I took him in the 10th on Tuesday before this news. So you do have to push him up. Sure. But again, I am afraid, though, that the hype is going to be built and, he's going to move too far up.
I adjusted the cheat sheet. Guys, if you have the ultimate cheat sheet, that's being updated basically on a daily basis now. News breaks. If it's something that's movable, I'll make the update on the cheat sheet. Antonio Gibson, I tucked him right there under 6B, the back end of the 6th round, where you should be taking a look at him. Because of knowing that some people are going to overhype and some people are going to push. If you're in a league with a Redskins homer, forget it. I mean, Adam's right. You'll see him go in the 4th or 5th round. So be sensible about it and make that move. Now let me ask you here. Let's talk a little Fournette, Tampa Bay, because kind of an interesting shift here. Another big roster move that kind of surprised me. Dare Ogunbowale, who was a week ago named the 3rd down pass catching running back, released today. So you've got Fournette, you've got Ronald Jones, you've got Keyshawn Vaughn, you've got LaShawn McCoy. They get rid of Ogunbowale. I kind of have a sneaking suspicion we might see McCoy get released as well. I mean, this backfield to me, and I'll say this because it is about opportunity. And when you look at because I've gone back and forth with a lot of people about Fournette, and I posted my final thoughts on it on Twitter, and I said, listen, Tom Brady wants a veteran in the backfield, all right? If Bruce Arians was so key on Ronald Jones being his starting running back, well, then why do you draft Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round? Why do you then sign LaShawn McCoy? Why do you name Ogunbowale your 3rd down pass catching back? Why do you then go out and immediately sign Leonard Fournette the moment he clears waivers. Like, if that's the case, I mean, you want to talk about reading tea leaves. It's everything that they're saying is that, yeah, Ronald Jones is still in the mix and he's still our starter, but they're clearly not happy with him. They clearly didn't want to walk into the regular season with him as their top back.
Yeah, I mean, Arians is still saying he's our starter, but what else is he going to say? And he's probably going to need to start Jones probably the first couple weeks. You know, Leonard Fournette just got there. He's got to learn things, so they'll sprinkle him in. Tough matchup week 1 against the Saints. Then I think they had a favorable matchup in week 2, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's Carolina off the top of my head, but not sure there. But yeah, I mean, it might take a couple weeks for that to become the back, but he's likely going to be. Ronald Jones, they keep talking him up, but as you said, everything they've done showed they don't believe in him to be the main back. And, you know, Fournette definitely was probably a surprise to them. They didn't expect him to be out there. But he's going to get his opportunities. I still don't love him as much as, you know, last year because he is a volume back. He's not going to get the volume that he was getting in Jacksonville. But look, it wouldn't be a surprise if he does get a ton of touchdowns and if he's able to become a pass catching back, you know, he could put up good numbers. I think there's a wide range of outcomes for him. I think that's what's tricky with Fournette.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, so New Orleans, Carolina in week 2, Denver in week 3, Chargers,
that's the
Bears.
Thing. So if Jones starts week 1 and is solid and Fournette is not up, I mean, Jones could shred the Panthers in week 2.
You could shred the Panthers in week 2,
maybe,
dude. Come on.
I might have to put on about 60, 70 more pounds, but yeah.
You're wiry. You're wiry, my friend. All right, well, let me ask you here. We're looking around the NFL right now, knowing that these cuts are being made. Are there any players out there who you look at and you say, you know, they could be on the borderline? I was actually, I'll tell you, give one example that I saw was that if the Rams cut Josh Reynolds, who's been a fringe player for them now since he got drafted, they're going to save like $2.1 million on their cap this year if they do that, which obviously gives them a little flexibility if they need to bring in more O-line help or whatever. Van Jefferson supposedly has leapfrogged him in the rankings, the wide receiver rankings on that team, and Jefferson is now listed as their number 3. So Reynolds is a guy who, again, that was like a late round guy that a lot of people were throwing a dart at because of the possibility with no Brandon Cooks now. Anybody out there that you see that you're like, maybe this guy might be in jeopardy?
No one that comes to mind. I will say this, though. I mean, I know we don't talk kickers much, but a lot of people were drafting Matt Gay as a top 7, top 10 kicker.
Yeah.
He was waived. He was waived by the Bucs.
I know.
So that was certainly surprising. So, you know, I updated my rankings to take him out there. And that's the thing with kickers, man. I mean, you know, it's not crazy to take, not early, but like I did this in my home league. So the draft's going on and we have IDPs. And I was going to go into the season without a kicker and make the move week 1 to get an extra, you know, running back receiver on the roster. And I looked, I'm like, you know what? Nah, man, there's very few reliable kickers. I'm going to take Greg Zuerlein here. It was around 21, I think, out of 24. But I'm like, Greg Zuerlein's reliable. The Cowboys' offense is good. They don't have a bye to week 10. So I added Zuerlein in round 21. Again, not pushing him up the board. I'm not saying take your kicker in round 10. I'm just saying when you get to the later rounds and, you know, you see Tucker, Bucker, Lutz, like some of those top kickers, I mean, it's a very unreliable position. At the same time, you could say, well, then I could pick someone up off waivers at any point this year. That's true. But some of those reliable kickers, it's kind of a comforting feeling to have them on your roster that you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, like it's the bye week, and that's the only time that you need to freak out. I mean, it's funny that you say that because I do that in drafts all the time, and I've been doing it a lot in the industry drafts also, because the industry drafts, you know, you got you got some people who say that they're not going to grab a kicker or a defense like you've done in some. You get some people that it's an automatic, you know. That it's just last 2 rounds, kicker defense. And if it's a 16 round draft, you know, I'll sit there and like round 14 and I'll make that move and I'll grab that top defense. I'll grab that Steeler defense, or I'll grab Greg Zuerlein. and use that last round, because I know in that last round everybody's grabbing a kicker or a defense. So I can grab that James Robinson, or I can grab that Van Jefferson, or any other high upside guy who might have some potential to do something, rather than just that whole formulaic. I'm going to draft 14 straight rounds of position players and then boom, kicker and defense in the last 2 rounds. You got to try and stay ahead of the curve there, and that's knowing who you're drafting against.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, you know the competition, and in these industry drafts, that's what most people do. And in your home leagues, you probably know your competition if it stays relatively the same. Maybe someone drastically changes because they finally got the Fantasy Alarm draft guide and they got smart. But for the most part, the competition. I mean, I know there's I got a draft on Tuesday. This team takes their third quarterback before I take my first every single year. You want to waste a roster spot in a league where we start one quarterback? That's good for you. You're going to ruin your depth. Go ahead, do it. I'm still going to find a good quarterback.
Yeah, it's always a peril, man. I mean, that's the funny part about being in the business, is that when you start looking at your home leagues, and your home league people finally start coming around, and they're like, "Wow, let me go check out Bender's stuff." Meanwhile, so I do the Sirius XM Jam On League, and that's bunch of jam band musicians. And then a bunch of sports guys who are jam band fans. And so we all come together for this, but I mean, set your watch by it, man. I know a week before our draft, all of a sudden these guys all have other drafts they have to do. And hey, Bender, can I take a look at that cheat sheet? Hey, Bender, can you update my subscription to Fantasy Alarm for me? And all of a sudden, when it comes down to me sitting in the draft room with them, all of a sudden they start plucking my players here and there. So I've got to zig while they're all zagging at my guys, which is fine, because then I just kind of tilt over towards more of a Ronis type draft and skip the Bender draft for that one.
Yeah, it's funny because someone the other day texted me asking about trade advice in a league I'm in with them. It was the GST. And I'm like, there are no trades. He's like, what? I'm like, did you not read the rules? I mean, I don't know what to tell you. So, but still, please don't ask me for advice in a league we're in together. See, someone was like, would you wouldn't give advice to someone in your league, right?
Not in the league itself.
Right.
I mean, if they were in the other conference, was it somebody in your conference too?
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah, dude.
Was it Vaccaro?
We're competing for money. What?
Was it Vaccaro?
No. He's not going to ask me for advice. He's done quite well on his own.
I'm saying maybe if it's somebody in your conference. I play in the Sirius XM Dynasty League, and I play in the Dirty Laundry League, which is a husband and wife league there. And I'll have people in the other conferences ask me thoughts on this, thoughts on that, and for that I'll do. But here's the other thing: if you're in multiple leagues with the same person, and they start talking to you about their other league, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm throwing you all this advice, and you're in my other league here. So now all of a sudden you're going to start looking for these guys. I always have to watch who I give my waiver wire advice to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. If people are in multiple leagues with you and they know they're going to compete against you, they're going to look and see what you drafted. Like my friend the other day, yesterday called me. He's in my home league. He's like, yeah, I didn't really prep for the draft that well. I don't like my draft. He's like, I was looking at your draft, and there's some things that I just don't know why you did it. He's like, but I know by week 3 I'll look and be like, oh, that's why he did it. So
I got a call this morning from a friend of mine who was just like, man, it's been so busy, man. I haven't had a chance to prep for any of my drafts right now. Who do you like right now?
Oh, I got that text last night. He's like, oh, who are your players you're targeting? I'll Venmo you some money.
I'm playing in a poker tournament. I'm on the phone. I'm playing in the tournament. I'm on the phone, helping a friend of mine throughout his draft. And I was like, I just want you to know that anything that I say to you right now does not apply to our league, because all bets are off there.
Yeah, that's tough, man. But it's funny, right around this early September, you always get calls and texts out of people you haven't heard from in a year.
They're all anxious and ready. All right, well, that's going to do it for us here today on Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. It's draft season, guys. There's a lot going on here. Now, tomorrow, that's right, Saturday.
Yeah, there you go. I know it's tough to know the days this time of year.
It really is. It really is. But Saturday, which is tomorrow, from 1 to 3 p.m., go to fantasyalarm.com/chat. We're having a draft party. Adam's going to be there. I'm going to be there. John and Pemba's going to be there. I think Jen Piacenti, Ryan Hallam, everybody's going to be hanging out in that chat room so that we can answer all your questions. So if you're in the draft at that point, or if you're just looking to get some advice for your upcoming draft, you don't want to miss it. Again, that's fantasyalarm.com/chat. And that's our FA draft party for tomorrow. So that's going to do it for us here today. Don't forget to tune into the Annie Up podcast over on Spotify and iTunes. That's a whole lot of me and a whole lot of Ronis and a splash of some of the other guys there as well. So it's going to do it for us here today. Big thanks to Ed Bonnell, our producer here today. For Adam Ronis, I'm Howard Bender. We'll catch you next time.